Hi everyone, how is it going? Welcome back to the Mirror Club. If this is your first time here, my name is Butlebe Nkosi Chinara and I am the host of this show, which is essentially just about self-discovery, self-knowledge, and self-transcendence. And we cover some interesting topics that will hopefully help you on your journey with the above. Today I have a really exciting guest. Her name is Nyasha Mandiveyi, and we're going to have a really cool chat. But for starters, hi Nyasha, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? And thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Would you actually like to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of a backstory about like who you is, what you do?
I guess, well, my name is Nyasha, or some people call me Sam. I use both names equally. I am a creative person, I guess. I do documentary filmmaking, journalism. I'm working for an NGO that has to do with like democracy and free expression. And then I have my own project on the side where I conduct a residency with different types of creatives, and we collaborate on a digital collective. So that's kind of the gist of what I do. And I'm interested in like human rights. I'm interested in accountability. I'm interested in dialogue and those types of topics and situations. So yeah.
Cool. Well, once again, thanks for coming, and I'm super excited to hear your insights because today's topic and what we're going to be speaking about is group morality, cancel culture, and the polarization of opinion in the social media world that we now live in, especially in 2020, but also the history of it. So the reason that I wanted Sam to come on is because I just had this I don't know. I started noticing that the socials were just a little bit wild. It seemed like every day there was a new outrage, and it was actually at the point where it was hard to keep up with it because I'd stopped using Twitter as much for like personal reasons. But then you come on and there's like this huge like barrage of negativity and people upset with someone and you don't even know where to start and like trying to find out where it begins. It was just a lot. And I just noticed because me and Sam follow each other, and I just noticed that she was also starting to see that like things are a little bit just hectic and a little bit negative. And also she had commented about a person that I had recently stopped following because of their kind of righteous rage and like air of superiority when they were speaking with people. So yeah, that's what we wanted to chat about. And I guess I just wanted to know, Sam, after seeing that, how is like what are you seeing, what are you feeling about social media right now? How's your relationship with the needs?
So my main insight with social media is obviously Twitter. That's where I'm mostly active. With like Instagram and Facebook, it's like occasional, and people don't tend to have conversations or discussions or dialogue that goes in depth, right? My main engagement is on Twitter. So what I'm saying mostly is from what I see on Twitter. So I think my experience. What was your question? Sorry.
It was just like, how are you feeling about the social media, like at least Twitter right now, and like what's kind of been your experience, and kind of maybe also what got you to that point where you started kind of being vocal about your critiques, because it's also a space right now which is kind of very, you have to think one way and not think another. So yeah, what got you to that place?
Right. So I think I'll start from my entrance. So when I started really engaging on Twitter, obviously, I realized that when I had become more vocal, more angry, more emotional, more outraged about certain things that were happening in Zimbabwe at the time, whether it was women issues or just general human rights issues, I got a lot of engagement. As opposed to when I was just talking about the normal stuff, there wasn't really that much engagement. So every time I would talk about, let's say, tribal issues or sexism or political issues, I always got engagement, but that obviously came with a lot of negative commentary from other people, obviously because of my tone and the way I spoke. When I started engaging a lot more on Twitter, it was very common for people to be rude and dismissive, basically. That was kind of like a cool way of, not cool, but it was just normal. Like if someone says something, you can just tell them shut up or like, or whatever. And responding to people in that way for some reason drew a lot of attention. Like my follower count was growing a lot. my likes, my retweets. And then when I kind of stopped, I just got to a point where I was done, and like I just didn't feel, not to say I didn't care anymore, but I just got tired of engaging in that way. Obviously, my engagement was just changed. So that was kind of my initial understanding of how Twitter works and how people prefer to use the platform. And then obviously, like about 2-3 years later, and it's getting, in my opinion, it's getting a little bit worse because it's almost like you're not allowed to. First of all, you're not allowed to have, not that you're not allowed to have an opinion, but you're not allowed to have a certain kind of opinion. And you're also not allowed to ask questions because obviously no one owes you that emotional labor. And you're not, there's just a lot of rules now that is becoming emotionally, I think, exhausting and just confusing in a lot of ways. Because for me, I guess my question is, okay, what is the end goal? Are we trying to have a conversation to understand where someone is coming from, or to teach people, or to get people to see a perspective, or are we just trying to tell people off? So, yeah, I think that's how I see it now. It's like it's slowly shifting to people come here to be told off, or like to be morally, someone to tell them, oh, you're wrong, or whatever. That's how I see it.
No, it makes, I totally agree. Like, I think that just seeing how things are going, I'm starting to feel like I need to both examine like my own activity and like my own motivations behind like, okay, why have I engaged in certain ways, and then why are other people, like by extension, why are other people doing the same? So there's this idea that I guess during the research for this we came across, which is like the idea of moral grandstanding, which is kind of like this kind of kick that people get from being the moral authority and like in a public setting like social media, pointing out how somebody else isn't on the right side of morality, I guess, and also just kind of feeling this sort of satisfaction with that punishment because it also like bolsters their own ego and their idea that like I'm a good person and I'm right. And it's really strange because like obviously that's what you start to see, and I'm wondering like, are you guys actually here being this kind of negative about what somebody else has decided to say or what they've potentially done because you actually want to see real change in the world? Or is it because you want to be seen as somebody who has certain ideas and certain ideologies? Like, what is the actual motivation? And that's really confusing me right now at this time. And yeah, in terms of like the concept of moral grandstanding, how have you seen it potentially manifesting in social media, and like amongst which kinds of groups do you think it really manifests the most at this point right now?
So I think that the way that it plays out is sometimes it's very extreme, but sometimes it's also like a really subtle way of speaking. So for me, the idea of moral grandstanding that I've seen that has spoken to me more than anything is, okay, let's say, for example, on Twitter. Twitter is like a platform for a lot of marginalized groups, so like women, Black people in general, LGBTQIA community. It's a space where we're kind of like on level ground as people that would normally say are privileged or are ignorant or don't really have any idea into what we experience. So it's like a platform where we get to speak and have a voice, and people can actually listen and pay attention to what we're saying. But I find that now within those specific communities, sometimes let's say, I want to use an example that's not too intense. I'll just use feminism, for example. Let's say with feminism, there was a time where people were talking about how women should divest from like men, basically. And specifically, it was towards straight Black women. This conversation was directed towards straight Black women.
Yeah.
And so the honest truth is that I had never really heard that term before. Honestly, I hadn't. I understood the idea behind it, but I'd never really heard it phrased in that way. So the conversation was basically, when I saw a tweet about it, was more like giving off this implying that women shouldn't engage in romantic relationships with men, of which a lot of women were not trying to explain, like, no, that's not what they meant, but that's kind of how it came across. Anyway, regardless of that, when that conversation was happening, there was a lot of first of all, the woman who had started that conversation in that context was a straight Black woman as well. So she was kind of At first, I didn't even know she was because of the way she was speaking to the straight black women. Almost like, you straight black women, like, you know, when you're romantic relationships with men, you're the weakest link. You need to divest from that. So I genuinely didn't really understand what that was. So I think that for me, that's kind of an example of it where a lot of people have gotten to a place where they've acquired all this knowledge about certain topics, right? And they understand the end goal of what it is. Whereas a lot of us, not that we're just coming into feminism, but we're just coming into a certain type of feminism, right? Like the way I was introduced to feminism was through Chimamanda Adichie. But obviously, as time goes on, you leave kind of that. It's almost like the basics. That was almost like the basics for me. So for me to gain a deeper understanding and going deeper into this, what feminism is about, and not really knowing all the terms or understanding what exactly people mean when they talk about certain things. But you can't come into this conversation and question. You can't come into this conversation and have doubt and be like, okay, I actually don't get it. Because then people will be like, you are, the weakest link. Like that's where the name calling and the insults comes in. And I don't understand what it is that makes people go from like you're introducing a topic and then people want to kind of understand what it is that you're trying to say, and then it goes from that into like belittling people, like you're stupid, you don't know stuff, you don't understand, you're the weakest link, yada yada. I don't know if that's the correct idea, but that's kind of to me read off as like a moral grandstanding situation that I felt like was more. That seemed to me like moral grandstanding, where it's like all this, you have all this information, you understand exactly what it is, but you're talking to people who are here, and in essence, I just felt like they weren't even trying to get us to the place where they are to see and understand. It was like, you are down there, you don't get it, you're the weakest link, and you need to shut up.
And you're a bad person. And that's when I start to call into question, like, what actually is your motivation? Because do you want the world to be a better place? Do you want, because the idea is, like, you're a terrible person, you're making the world like less pleasant for everybody else with the way that you're behaving. And then when we want to have conversation about it, it's like, okay, no, you're trash, you don't deserve the time, you don't deserve the effort, this is just who you are. And then I'm like, so why are you bringing this up if it's literally just posturing, because you're like, okay, I'm going to say this opinion, and then everyone who I guess gets the terminology or whatever is going to then co-sign to it, and then I'm going to be shown to be part of the in-group of people who are aware of this language or who are aware of these theories, rather than actually like having the motivation to change people. And even if that is the motivation to change people, I think that we probably need to start like re-looking at our strategies. Like, if we do want the world to change, is it positive or is it helpful to start insulting somebody, or to start like, just making it out like they're this terrible person when they're trying to engage with you and they're trying to understand? Or even if they aren't trying to understand, even if they're trying to actively like tell you you're wrong, is it an effective kind of strategy for us to then insult someone? Because it's kind of like an animal that's being cornered. That animal is not going to become cuddly and like understand where you're coming from. They're going to attack as well. So it's just like, what is our psychology? What is our motivation behind this? Because clearly, that's where I start to think that it must be moral grandstanding, because you're just trying to show that you're above somebody else, and your unwillingness to help somebody to get to the level that you're at almost implies that you want to keep that distance and you want to keep that kind of like pedestal that you're on. And it's strange.
So I think that for me, it was almost like, okay, you come with an opinion, you present it, people disagree, you basically bark at those people like you don't know anything, is dumb. So obviously the situation will become polarized. I will stick to these people who agree with me, and you will stick to those people who agree with you, which is how conversations normally happen on Twitter. And honestly, after that whole situation, I was very confused because I thought I understood the end goal of like all these movements, but now I feel like I actually don't understand what the end goal is. Like I need to read up on it to really understand, because, for example, with the whole divest thing with women and all these things, I totally I get the idea behind it, and I get the whole thing of like glorifying things like marriage and all these things. I see how that can become toxic and aid in like this whole idea of patriarchy and putting women in a certain place. So I get it. Like I don't fully get it, but I kind of understand why people would want women not to center men in essence. Like I had to obviously do my own personal reading, which is not easy, by the way. People think it's just, oh, just go on Google, like Google exists. But when you go on Google, there's like a ton of information that comes at you. So it's really hard to sift through and get the perspective that you on Twitter brought it up, that you specifically want me to understand.
Subscribe to, yeah.
Because there's a lot of opinions within that will tell you different things. So it's like, okay, so what do you mean, basically? So even with that, I just felt like women are we're not just allies, we are part of these movements, like Black, especially Black women. It's not like yes, we have privilege being maybe straight and being cis or whatever, but to an extent, we still struggle with certain issues because we are women and because we are Black. So I find that sometimes these conversations make an enemy out of someone. It's like, I'm not your enemy. Like, I'm literally not an enemy. Where I feel like we're on the same side. And so I understand maybe if you engage with someone that you consider an actual enemy differently, but I don't think if we're in the same camp, we should be engaging with each other in such a way that we're pushing people out of the movement, basically. Like, what's the point of, even with this whole Beyonce thing, I understand the criticism that Beyonce, that comes with Beyonce and like her African content and like glorifying certain aspects of African culture.
Maybe could you explain what happened with Beyonce for people who like don't know the outrage?
Basically, right. Beyonce released the what is it called? Black is King. She is about to release. Anyway, it's not even out. It was a trailer of a movie, I think.
Yeah.
That she's about to release. So it's like a 1-minute trailer, and obviously the imagery of the trailer is very stately. It's like kings and queens, like the typical Wakanda, like Black people, we get kings, we get queens or whatever. So I think the valid stuff that I thought was valid, the criticism that I thought was valid was the way that sometimes Americans portray Africans. It's very fantastical. I don't know, it's like
the mythical black man type vibe. Yeah.
Yes. And then also that she doesn't make herself available when she tours Africa to like a lot of these African countries that she puts on, right? So I understand that. I mean, obviously there's more to it, but I personally felt like telling her, trying to deplatform Beyonce, or like, not, you can't, I don't think it's possible to deplatform, but trying to tell her you're not allowed to speak on Africa or African culture, I personally don't think that's a good way to approach it, because I feel like Beyonce is someone who is definitely on our side. Like, I think capitalism aside, I'm not going to comment on that because I don't have the range. I feel like she cares enough about the continent, in terms of representation, because we can tell she engages African artists. She's trying to center, she's trying to introduce our music to a different audience. There's so many things that she is trying to do, even in her ignorance, that I feel like is not necessarily about her stopping, but just us kind of redirecting her to show the fullness of who we are to the audience that she wants to show. And so I feel like shouting and telling someone like, you don't deserve to talk about, I'm just like, I don't think she's an enemy, honestly. Like, I don't see her as an enemy. I see her as like someone that can help in terms of representation. Many people may not like that, but that's how I see it. So I feel like the way we engage her is different to the way we would engage like a racist white person who's like out to destroy or like say negative things, because she's not coming with that energy, right? She's just coming with a little bit of ignorance. So I think we need to address different energies differently. We can't address Beyonce and some racist person the same way. You know, we have to address them in the energy that they come. She's someone who's coming to the culture and wants to positively represent it. So I feel like we should. I personally am okay with her doing that, but I guess, how do we engage her?
Yeah, at least having a conversation.
Right.
To like educate somebody. And that's the thing, where it feels like everyone is expected to come to the table, like you said, with the same amount of knowledge. And it's like people also are posturing, and it's so interesting because right now I think what I mainly want to focus on is like liberal leaning people, people who are more left leaning, because in terms of like intolerance, and all of that, we've already painted conservative people as people who like don't want to listen, or people who are totalitarian in their viewpoints or whatever. That's already, and that's something for another day where we can discuss like the stereotyping of the conservative, people who identify as conservative. But I want to focus on the left leaning people because of what we also do you subscribe to being like left leaning?
I don't know
Would you
anymore.
identify with that?
I don't know anymore. I think I'm center left.
Yeah, same. I think I would be center left, as well. But just people who are more liberal in their thinking. The idea is that we're supposed to be open minded, we're supposed to be compassionate, we're supposed to be like caring about other people's well being and stuff like that. So it's just really interesting to see how we also start to mirror a lot of the things that like, well, I'll say we, for those who do identify as people who are open-minded or liberal, we start to then emulate the exact same things that we supposedly have decided that we're left and like not conservative, and we were supposedly rejecting those things, like just being very totalitarian with our viewpoints, and like, you need to believe this and this is what you're supposed to do. Like, I think about it now recently, in recent times I've been thinking about it like church, sort of, because like there's a reason that I left church, and I left church because I felt like there was kind of this idea of like, you must be spotless, and if you're not spotless, then we're coming for you and we're gonna drag you. And then there was now like a lot of what would be like moral grandstanding, was just the self-righteousness in church, where people would just kind of show up and it was like, my ish don't stink, I'm holy. They start doing like the most crazy displays in the, you know, of prayer and stuff like that, so that everyone can see that, oh, this person's serious about God. And like, you know, they dress well to come to church because they're serious about God. And it's like, there was just so much, I felt, of holier than thou-ness, and then attack on anybody who made a mistake, right? And when I finally left, I realized that it was like, these people who kind of attacked had their ish that didn't stink as well. They had stuff festering below the surface that was negative, that was ungodly or whatever. But then they put so much energy into wanting to look spotless so that they would be able to kind of get satisfaction punishing people who were not able to look as spotless. And it's just so interesting because it's like, okay, one would leave that type of an environment and go into a more liberal environment where it's like, okay, we can, you know, talk about things and we can be open, and, you know, I'm not like just, I guess, oppressed by this like super judgmental environment. And then it's the same thing all over again. This notion that as well, like, you're not allowed to make mistakes. You're supposed to be perfect, and you're supposed to have been perfect from the womb. And it's just like unrealistic. It's so unrealistic. And I look at myself and I'm like, I'm someone who fortunately, like, because I grew up in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is super conservative. I grew up in the church. The church is super conservative. It has like ideas that are just oppressive. It has ideas that deny people's humanity, like homosexual people, women, all of that. And I went to uni, and I was just fortunate that I'm someone who's like really insatiably curious. I'm always like watching a documentary, I'm always looking up something. And I came into contact with so much media that educated me before I had the opportunity to go and like offend someone else or hurt somebody else. It was just by chance that, like, you know, I liked watching Vice documentaries, and that would cover like, you know, trans topics and like LGBTQI topics and like all of these types of things. Or I met people who lived those experiences, and like I was just exposed to that. But that was just by chance. Imagine if I had stayed in Zimbabwe and I wasn't exposed to those types of things, and then I just say something that's off the mark, and then people just come and start attacking me, and they're like, you are the worst person in the world. I'm gonna think to myself, wait, I'm not a bad person. Like, I try my best. Maybe these people are just attacking me and they're heathens or whatever it is. And it's just, I think that if we really do want to see change and we want people to be better people, we have to change our strategy of like how we're going after them. Well, not going after them, but trying to convert them, if that is even the motivation, because it's just not seeming like that's what you're trying to do.
I don't think so anymore, honestly. Like, for example, you said something that I totally relate to you on the whole church thing, because I also grew up in the church, and I left church for specific reasons that I'm now feeling in these movements that I are forcing me to kind of question that, can I still be an ally to like trans community, LGBTQIA community, and all these communities without necessarily being deep in the trenches, not in the trenches of social media. Like, can I do this thing in real life and still be an ally and still stand for what I believe in and still support people who deserve equality without necessarily being entangled in this social media world, because I just find it very toxic. But to your point that people are part of the environment, I grew up in Zimbabwe as well, conservative Christian church, and I was, in essence, if you look at it, yeah, I had homophobic mindset, obviously, because the Bible, whatever we were taught in church. And I also happened to go to a very liberal college, and every other person was gay. And it was just impossible for me to hold on to this, because obviously the real life reality was, of course, that is a lie. I just saw for myself, I was like, that is so terrible. That is not the way to view human beings or to judge people.
Because you had exposure, yeah.
Yes.
Oh no, what's happening? Sorry, Sam, I lost you a little bit. And I still can't hear you.
How's it now?
Yes.
Right. So when I did start going to the liberal arts college, and I had like every other person was gay, and it just exposed the lies that I feel like the lies that I was taught, the Christian background, conservative culture here. And when I was in Zim, I honestly felt like I was in some kind of like a prison mentally. It's really hard to think outside of the confines of this country sometimes, or any situation. That's why I strongly believe in that idea that people are a product of the environment. There was no other way for me to understand homosexuality or any of that out in Zim, in the context that I lived, in the community that I lived, in the church that I went to. I worked at church as well. So there was zero chance of me encountering or having these conversations with people who are not Christians, or people who didn't think the way that I thought, or the way that I was taught to think, until I left the country. And obviously when I left the country, then I realized, oh my God, like, this is crazy. Like, that was the first time I felt like a lot of what I'd been taught wasn't true. And I had my like awakening moment, and my like, what do you call it, deconstructing, like Christian terminology, deconstructing. And I just feel like in the same vein, now on Twitter especially, it's like what you're saying, people expect people to come out of the womb knowing everything and understanding everything, you know, and then when they don't, they're attacked. And there's no grace for people to grow. There's no room for people to evolve. And even now, I know there's certain things that I probably think that in 5 years from now, I won't think or see things that way anymore. And so it's like there's almost like a lack of, like, the humanity aspect is almost being removed. Like, yes, I understand that these things are important. Like, human rights is not something to make seem like it's nothing. It's super important. Equality is important. All these things, I understand how important they are, but I think that at the cost of, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like, because I'm right, basically, I have the right to speak to you whichever way and treat you whichever way, because I know I'm right. Like, okay, someone who's oppressed can say, because I'm oppressed, I'm a Black woman and I'm oppressed, so any white person or any person that comes my way, I have the right to speak to you in whatever way I want, to judge you or to address you in a way that you are not necessarily beneath me, but that you, because you don't understand oppression, you don't understand all these things, I'm going to address you in a way that justifies my anger and my frustration with what I experience in life. I don't know. Yeah, it's like a weird thing. And I also don't want to like shame people for being just rightfully angry.
Exactly.
It's not my problem is not anger. My problem is like how we have conversations with each other, especially most times with people who are literally on the same side as you, or even the conservative people who genuinely are like, people like me. I used to be a conservative, but I'm not anymore, obviously, because I wasn't truly one. I just needed the right kind of environment to kind of help understand. So those people, I think, there's like the two extremes. Like you have the people on the right and the people on the left. Those don't really need convincing. But there's this a group of people who are kind of in the center of it all, who kind of can go either way. So I think those are the people that it's important for us. Sorry, I'm going to move because of the sun. I think those people, it's important for us to engage them in a certain way, because we need the numbers, right? We need the people. I don't know. Maybe we don't need the numbers. Maybe it's not even about that for people anymore. That's why I'm saying maybe I don't understand what the end goal is, because my initial idea was, oh, it's like equality, right? And like maybe that's just like a woohoo, like, no, it's not about equality. It's about anti-capitalism and all these other things that I honestly don't feel like we're going to be able to do in our lifetimes. So... Right.
But yeah, you're right that you need numbers. Like, if we want to get those things, you need to be able to communicate in a persuasive way to get other people on your side.
I was just saying that I almost feel like I don't understand the end goal of these movements anymore. Not all of them, but sorry. It almost feels like certain people aren't welcome anymore. Let's say, analogy's sake, we are trying to create this, we want a revolution, we want the world to look different, but it almost feels like certain people are not going to be allowed into that space.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense, because of the way we speak about it. So, for example, with feminism, I don't want to get in trouble, but sometimes I just get this impression that, like, okay, so like, are men allowed post, let's say hypothetically, everything happens the way that we want it to happen. What is a man's place? Yeah, I'm not trying to like save men or whatever. I'm just saying I'm confused, because initially I thought, oh, it's about equality, just like I think Black Lives Matter is about equality. And I guess in that equality, what is the place post, like what does race look like post, let's say post-racism.
Post-racism. Yeah.
What does sexism, what does that look like? Maybe that's what I need to understand, because I feel like sometimes when I have these conversations, especially on Twitter, it just seems like maybe we're not looking for a place where there's like this, like this peace on earth. It's like everybody just kind of getting along. Maybe that's not the end goal. Maybe the end goal is something completely different, where like a space for women, or just a certain type of woman, or not just women, but a space for a certain type of people or group of people where other people are not allowed in that space. I'm not saying that as like a way to like save men or whatever. I'm just genuinely wondering if that's the end goal.
Yeah. And I think that that's like so important that you bring it up, because I feel like we're at this point where I wouldn't say we have, but I wonder if we have lost sight of the end goals, and like it's just become us wrapped up in our ego and wrapped up in our own gratification, like what it feels like to punish somebody, or what it feels like to look like the woke one, or whatever. Like, that's why I think it's so important to have this conversation, because everything in life that we do has to be conscious and with intention. And we have to actually look right now at the state of things. Is this going in the direction that we wanted to go in? Or are we just replicating another form of oppression? For example, just in terms of the ability to express. A lot of people right now are actually afraid to say what they think, and they stifle what they say. And that doesn't produce people who are more woke or people who are more tolerant. It produces somebody who's going to hide their racism, or hide whatever it is that they like, their sexism, or hide their homophobia, or hide their transphobia. Because they realize, oh, I could lose my job, or oh, I could lose my following, or oh, I could just become a social pariah because everybody is just piling onto me. And then they don't learn anything, because they haven't learned, because we refuse to have a conversation, because we say you're not worth the time or the energy or the effort. They end up just learning what they're not allowed to say, not necessarily learning why they're not supposed to say it, or why they're not supposed to think or behave in that way.
Like, for example, I am very much centered on Twitter. I'm slowly coming out of that, to be honest, because I'm just tired of like being afraid of some stranger halfway across the world telling me like, girl, whatever. But I would rather what I really think and feel, because how am I going to learn or understand if I'm not honest about where I stand? Let's say something is confusing to me, like especially with feminism. I'm at a point where I'm like, maybe I don't belong in this movement. Not to say I don't want equality for women. Not that I don't think. I think misogyny is real. I think patriarchy needs to be dead. I think it needs to go. But at the same time, I just feel like maybe I'm not the type of woman that is welcome in this movement because certain things are just a bit confusing to me. Like I have doubts, I have a lot of questions, and I think it's very healthy. Like I don't understand when a movement became like definitive, like, oh, we are the moral, like, people, flag bearers of feminism because we are like at the top of the oppressed. Like we're feminists, we're black, we're gay, we're disabled. Like you have like 5 things going against you, and maybe you're like, okay, because of that, I am above this just person who's just, they're just a woman and but they're straight.
I see.
But so this person, because of their positioning, you like, just like the way we are with white feminists, is like, it's not intersectional, right? So sometimes we're like, it's an ignorant type of view of feminism that is not inclusive of sometimes black women or inclusive of trans women, for example. And so because of that, sometimes when white feminism speaks, we feel morally obligated to like, oh, no, like, you don't get to tell us, you don't get to teach us anything, and you don't get to tell us anything because of these flaws within the way that you think and see things. Of which, the thing is, I get that. But at the same time, being on the receiving end of that, it becomes very confusing as well. Because then I'm also on the receiving end of that because I'm straight, right? And so sometimes it then confuses me because I'm like, I'm not an enemy. Like, I'm literally an ally. And beyond that, I'm also on the same side as you because I also want equality. So I get both sides in a weird way. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, so is it about being right, or is it about us kind of having like a end goal in mind and saying, okay, what is priority? Like, I don't know if we're even allowed to say, I feel like on a scale of what we're going for, this is not like, it's not that deep that someone on Twitter said the wrong word. I don't know. Like, I also don't want to be, I don't want to be sensitive as well.
There was that idea of like outrage fatigue, where basically just the notion that like people are just getting, let me look it up. I wrote down what this person said in one of the videos, which I thought was super interesting. But Hansi, yeah, people are just getting upset at everything to the point that Hansi, outrage no longer becomes a reliable signal of injustice in the world when people are like getting outraged over every single thing. And it's not to say that people aren't, when they're offended by something, they shouldn't say how they feel. Everyone's feelings are valid. If someone has offended you, that's a valid thing to express. But then when it receives the same outrage as, like, I don't know, someone who, for example, that girl from South Africa, Miss SA, who, like, in 2014, when she was, like, 13 years old, used to tweet jokes that, like, would have the N-word in them, like, oh, what you saying, nigga? Like, it wasn't even like she was using it like in that derogatory way. She was just saying it because I guess she thought she was a cool white girl who could say the N-word, that type of thing. And we bring that person up and we onslaught onto them and we say that all their accolades in the present should be taken away because of what they were doing back then. If there's that much energy for this, and then there's also the same amount of energy for Black Lives Matter, for people who really aren't aware of these types of things, and maybe people who aren't, on the right side of history in terms of their beliefs about if people deserve rights or not, they might end up looking at it like, sorry, I'm sick. They might end up looking at it and they're like, these people just like getting upset about everything. Don't worry. Whenever there's a new like outrage, it's just another day on Twitter, And it also becomes for us, the people who are actually potentially invested, it becomes another day on Twitter for us as well, because the way that Twitter and social media works with like the inundation of information and like the outrage one day and then the outrage the next day, you can't even hold enough energy and enough space for like one thing that's really important, because the next thing that happens, you're on to the next. And it's what people are saying about like the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff like that, how now people are starting to like think that it's over, but it isn't over. It's just that on social media, we move on from things so quickly. And people are like, oh yeah, on to the next outrage. Who said this? Who said that? And it's just like it's not productive. And there's one other thing that I wanted to talk about in that vein as well. I think that people who have, and this might be a conspiracy theory, but I think people who then also have, negative intentions can profit off of the outrage thing. Like with the whole, whoever it was, I can't remember which streaming company took off the Golden Girls episode with like a mud, where they were wearing like the mud masks, and the idea is that it's like, oh, okay, that's anti-black. I'm sure there are a lot more Golden Girl episodes which have misogynistic, racist, homophobic undertones, but they removed that one, and it feels like it's almost as if like contributing to the notion that like, see, people just get outraged over small things that don't matter, and then it doesn't allow us to actually devote a lot of energy to things that like are actually like killing people, hurting people, subjecting them to violence, those types of things. So yeah, it's just we have to be more intentional about like what we're doing, because every action begets another action. When we are outraged over everything, even though it's not an excuse. If someone says, well, I'm just going to be racist because you guys are outraged by everything anyway, it's not an excuse, but that might be a result of what we're doing, you know?
So, like, for example, with this whole outrage thing, I also think it's very emotionally unhealthy to constantly be engaged in the negative of what people have. Like, I know that for a lot, it's upsetting and it's hurtful as a Black person that for a lot of us, like dark or brown or whatever, Black girls, that we're like the butt of like racism or jokes, not just by not just by white people, but also Black men engaging in that. And there's always like these people who are revealed to have said those things, like Black women stink, Black women look like AIDS, those things. Like, it's hurtful. Like, of course, it sucks to see that, to know that people thought that was funny or engaged in that. But I personally have now chosen not to engage with that content anymore. Just because how many times am I going to get upset? Like, if everyone is revealed, if everyone's racist past, including my own, or anti-Blackness, is revealed every single day, you will be upset at every single person, like I swear 90%. Because, so for me, it's become like I prioritize what things deserve my attention. Like, what are the things that I feel like these are very, very important? These are priorities for me personally, and these are like, for me, in Zim specifically, to do with like LGBTQIA community. That's very important for me personally. And but I don't engage with like the negative people who come on to say,
who just come to say, God does, we don't like that in this country. It's like, why are we giving them energy?
That's not my target. For me, I don't care about those people. I care about the people, the young people who are coming up now, who were like me, who were taught something, they believed it because that's what they were taught, but they're open-minded, and it's just a matter of exposure for them to see and understand the other side. And that's how I feel like we need strategies on how to engage on this social media. Because if we don't, every single thing, like, oh, I remember I was looking at a post where someone was like, oh, we're going to go bully this person because they said they called a Black girl like a slave or whatever that is. And I'm just like, I mean, I guess it's fun for some people on Twitter to just go and like call the school and do all these things. But I almost feel like it's a diversion, because I think if we focus on the bigger picture, like where reform is necessary, like with the systemic issues, I think it'll have a ripple effect, I think, or domino effect, and slowly to affect all these other areas. Because I'm not going to be worried about some white girl in Kansas who is calling Black people the N-word and like getting outraged and focusing like 1 million retweets over that, as opposed to like 1 million retweets over something more pressing and more important. So I feel like we need, instead of filtering our opinions and emotions or whatever, we need to start filtering what we respond to, because I think that, for me, that strategy is so much more important than, oh, you said the N-word. Not to say people should say it, but I just feel like engaging racists is what they want, right? It's like a troll. Like, they know that if you come in my face and call me a gorilla, I'm going to respond. How about I ignore you? That's just how I feel now. I'm like, I'm going to, whatever. So what? Like, well, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that we need to be more strategic in how we engage. But who's in charge of that? That's almost why I feel like we also don't have like a central place. We don't have like an HQ of like the HQ of feminism or the HQ of like Black issues. Not that you need one, but how do we rally around something so that we become very vocal and very powerful in that thing? And like with the Beyonce thing, I'm always thinking, how can we get a message across to her that will sink in, as opposed to women saying whatever, us saying whatever we want, and then now the conversation has shifted from the important criticism to now social media terrorists, which I thought was funny. I mean, like
that was hilarious, but it's also low-key true.
Yeah, right. The conversation has already shifted from criticism to you guys are terrorists, which some of the ways people speak to people, it is kind of like you can't speak to someone as if they're beneath you and expect that person to be like, okay, like I get it now, like you're right. No, even if you're right, if you speak to someone as if they're beneath you and that you're like all things, like they're not gonna respond to that.
Yeah, and I find it also, like I was saying initially, just about how like the types of things that we suppose that we say we're against end up we like perpetuate the same. The truth of the matter, in terms of like the laws of the universe, like it's very difficult for you to get positivity through negativity. Like begets like. If you're going to be super negative, don't expect like you calling somebody an idiot and calling them, this or that or the other is gonna. You don't expect them to just be like, oh wow, this is great, okay, I understand you. Because you called me that name, I get it. Oh my God, you called me a racist, I get it, even though we should call racist. But like, you call, just the whole like, you're so dumb because you don't know this, or you're useless, or you're the weakest link. Like, me being called the weakest link is not going to inspire me to understand what you're saying. And it's just, it's just strange and it's confusing.
Like, wait, we don't have the answers. Like, what are the answers? It's just like questions. And I just wish that we would start there. We would start with just the questions that we all have and then take it from there. Like, if we allow ourselves to start with the questions and the doubts and the fears, even if the fears are ignorant and the questions are ignorant, even if the doubts are stupid, and it's like, but some people are just more intelligent than other people. That's just a fact. Some people,
and it's not a character flaw. You're not a terrible person because you're just ignorant. Yeah.
And some people are able to better understand concepts more than others. Like, I don't understand certain concepts, but sometimes it takes me watching a video and I'm like, oh, I totally get it now. Or someone explaining it, or like me going through a Twitter thread. And then now I understand. I never thought of that before. I never realized like that was a thing. But now I'm sorry, like it's just a fact of human nature. We don't know everything. We're stupid sometimes. We're ignorant. We're products of our environment. Sometimes it does take dialogue, but a certain type of dialogue to get us to the other side of like understanding. And then that's how then I have a conversation with you and I'm explaining, I'm like, oh, okay, like, so in feminism, when we're talking about divesting, this is actually what we mean. And we're not telling women, stop having romantic relationships with men. We're actually telling women to decenter men from like, I don't know, like your world shouldn't revolve around men or whatever. I agree with that. Things like that, where it's like now we're having conversation, we're having dialogue. We're not having like shouting contests where you tell me I'm like a weak link and I am a danger to society because I'm attracted to men, and because my attraction to men is gonna give me a weakness to
perpetuate patriarchy. Yeah.
Right. Because if you look at African culture, if you look at tetes and like my gurus and those type of people, they're the ones who instill these ideas of like patriarchy, right? Because for them it's also a survival thing. But how do I explain to her that that's what she's doing when she doesn't even understand what patriarchy? I mean, she understands, but she probably, if you say patriarchy, she'll be like, what, girl?
Yeah.
So how do we have these conversations in ways that women are not enemies? I think to me, unless they specifically choose to be against it, then okay, fine, whatever. But women, to me in general, I don't see women as other women as enemies. I don't see other Black people or whatever you want to call it.
Or like
I don't see them as...
Sorry, carry on.
No, it's fine. I don't see that as someone who is someone I should be fighting. I see that as someone I should be having a very healthy conversation, dialogue about issues. Even if there's tension there, that's okay. But for me, the point is not to fight, belittle you, and then literally cast you off
Yeah.
Like, bye. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this one really hurts me because when I think about our moms and our aunties and all those people who have
Mm.
gone through a lot of what we are fighting for, like equality for, like rape, mistreatment, abuse, harassment, more than what we've experienced, to be honest, because
Mm.
back then it was okay, it was
Yeah.
acceptable. So those women are the women that we turn around and say,
You don't know
because simply
anything. You're
because they
perpetuating
grew up
it.
in a right, they grew up in a different time and unfortunately are products of that time. And so it's going to take a while for them to kind of get to where we are at and understand what we're trying to do, and that, oh, we're actually trying to help the situation. So
Mm.
I don't see I used to do that, but I don't. I'm not going to go to my auntie or my mom and be like, listen here, girl, at the end of the day, what you're doing, you are for the patriarchy. And what I'm going to tell you right now is like, and that's how
And you're canceled because of that. You're not even my mom anymore.
so to me, it's like, that's counterproductive. I am fighting for you as a woman.
Mm.
So I am going to try by all means necessary to help you understand why I'm fighting for you and what I am fighting for, and not demonize you because unfortunately you are a survivor.
Mm. Yeah.
Like, you survived. Like, who knows? Like, I feel like if we ask our parents or moms and whatever what they went through, we will be shook at
Yeah.
some of the things that they suppress, the
Mm.
trauma that they have. Um, but at the same time, I almost feel like having conversations on Twitter for me makes those women out to be enemies simply because they are aiding patriarchy. But why are they doing that? Like, we're not even trying to understand the context of
Yeah.
why they are the way they are. And I'm trying my best to now come out of it because I was also like a moral, what do you call it? Like, I was like that. That's how I
Yeah.
engaged on Twitter. I was like, shut up. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
wagging your finger. I was the same. I think I was very, like, even now recently, sometimes I'll find myself, like, someone says something and my knee jerk, because I used to be like a Facebook keyboard warrior. Like, when someone posted something racist, an essay would be in their mentions and all of that. Like, I just thought that, like, I'm here, I'm supposed to save the world. But now I'll find, like, somebody saying something and I'm, like, typing it out and I just am like, and I just press backspace because I'm like, what's the actual point? Like, I'm spending energy on this person who seems committed to their stance. Like, those types of people who are like, oh, Zimbabwe is not a gay country. Like, I'm sorry, me tweeting at them is probably not going to change their opinion. And like you're saying, there's other ways that are more effective to, like, you know, change people's opinions, whether it's like creating content that like helps them to understand and then empathize with people with certain experiences and that type of thing. There's other ways that you can spend your energy. But yeah, one thing I guess I wanted to chat about, I feel like I've completely forgotten where my train of thought was going on that point. But I wanted to talk about kind of the pressure of creating public personas that are like, I guess, cohesive or comprehensive, or like I feel like there's a certain pressure where, for example, with when people were posting black squares, I do think that like a younger me, I didn't post anything because I'm not really on Instagram like that. I noticed the next day because I went on Instagram and there was all black squares in my feed, and I just didn't do it. And I was just like, for me, I know my own beliefs. Like, I know that I've been out here since like 2012, since, you know, Tamir Rice. And like, I feel like I've done the work of educating people in my own circles, educating people on social media. So I just felt like, okay, I don't need to do that. But then I do know that, and I think people who are my friends know me to be, like, they know that there wasn't any malice or I wasn't making a statement by not posting a black square. But then I feel like there is kind of like a pressure on some people where they feel like they always have to say something. They feel like if they don't say something, then it means that like their persona is just kind of muddied, which is so weird because it's like we're trying to create these personas online that completely match our outside reality. And there's actually, I feel like in terms of what we do, we don't realize that there's incentive for social media to operate this way. There's incentive from like Twitter wants you to always be posting everything about your life. Instagram wants you to always be posting everything about your life. And why have we succumbed to that pressure that that's what I need to do? If I believe in, if I believe in Black Lives Mattering and I haven't tweeted about it, do I really believe in Black Lives Mattering? It's just this weird thing. So like, how do you feel about that pressure?
so I didn't post either because honestly, I was just not emotionally, mentally willing to negotiate my worth online with some stranger, some racist stranger. Like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like, it's just, when it comes to race issues, I'm just simply not negotiating my humanity with some stranger online. Like, first of all the people that follow me, for the most part, know that Black Lives Matter. So there's nobody, personally, I felt like there's no one on my feed that needed that message. And if there's someone who needs to know that Black Lives Matter, like, if I post a black screen, okay, like, I'm not saying if people want that. I understand, like, there's power in, like, solidarity and showing up for one another. So I'm all for that. But certain things I just don't engage in anymore. And I think for me, the example that worked for me is the whole Kendrick Lamar. So people are, like, calling for Kendrick Lamar to say something about Black Lives Matter. And I was like, first of all, he does not use social media ever. And he speaks on it a lot in his music. That's his platform, right? But now all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're demanding that someone speaks the language that validates you. I don't know, like, for me, it doesn't make sense for me to force someone to say something online. It's like virtue signaling, right? As long as you say it online, then you're good. But haven't we been seeing, like, exposés of people who did the black square and are racist, like, companies? So I'd rather, personally, action for me is much, much better than a square. Like, if you are Jeff Bezos or whatever, if you put the black square, I need you to run that money. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, I prefer an artist to do what an artist does, which is with the music that they sing, with the audience that they have with their music, to do that and not force them to come into a space or a platform where, that, one, they don't use, two, they probably don't understand or agree with a lot of how conversations happen, just so that I prove to you that I care about Black lives. I don't need to prove to anyone that I care about my people, and I don't need to prove to anyone that I deserve equal rights. Personally, that's just how I feel. And so I just don't engage with virtue signaling anymore. Although I don't know that I see anything wrong with it. I think creating awareness is good, but I also, like, draw the line with, like, virtue signaling, where it's like you're now being forced to say something, and worse off, forcing a racist person to post something that they don't mean or they don't understand. So for the most part, I went and actually looked at a lot of celebrities that have had, like, racist issues, and they posted that stuff. But at the same time, that was all they did throughout this whole George Floyd situation. All they did was post a black square and then hashtag Blackout Tuesday. So for me, I was like, what? And that's it. That's like, and so for me, it's like, no, I don't vibe with that personally. I didn't really understand the black square one. I honestly just didn't understand it. I think it's a way for us to show it. I mean, it's nice. I understand that it's nice when someone shows that you, or stands in solidarity with you, like with the whole, I know Fazima Harry did the whole for the women who were abused, and she did the little heart hand profile picture. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. I think it's okay for people to, in fact, it shows you the numbers of, like, okay, these are the people who really care about this issue, or it gives you an idea, right?
It sparks the conversation for people who weren't aware.
Right. And follow ED, but for me, I think that it's not for everyone, and I don't think we should force everyone to do this thing. I think also that's what I also have a gripe with these movements and social justice is we want everyone to think the same, be the same, and do the exact same thing, when in essence, we all have different things. So some people's strengths may be like raising awareness on social media, and that's great. If you're like a person who's like pushing people on social media to do something, or you're pushing a certain message to reach a certain type of people who probably wouldn't see this, that's great. But not everyone is on that tip. Some people can donate, and they don't have to say a single thing. Some people are on the ground. Like, as a journalist, I want to write more stories about these type of things. So I think we all have different strengths, and we can all do things in the fields that we are in, and we all don't have to do that one similar thing. It reminds me of like the Coney one. The Coney, were you there?
Yes, Coney 2012. Wow, a throwback.
I was all up in there. I was like, Coney,
he's got to go. Only to find out it wasn't even a real situation.
apparently it was a real situation, but it wasn't presented the way, I don't know, they just kind of skewed the timelines. Basically,
Oh,
it had
really?
happened a long time ago, now officially, I guess, in hiding or something like that, but they
Oh,
made it
wow.
seem like now, this is happening now. I don't know what happened. That was such a confusing mess. So much money was donated to that movement. And then what happened to that money, and then finding out that 90%, if I'm not mistaken, of the costs go to admin situations of that organization. I think it's called Save the Children, or I'm not sure. I think it's called Save the Children. Is it? And then the guy had the whole crazy thing happening where he like went mentally off for a bit because it was too much pressure, and then the whole posturing of like his white little kid and him talking about this bad black man in Africa is killing children and we're gonna go like
What a
it
mess.
was a mess.
It was
And we were
truly
all
a mess. It was the beginning of all of this. We should have seen it coming. Of what do you call it? People call it slacktivism. And I think that's
right.
where I think we need to look at the intention. There's absolutely nothing. I think fundamentally, at the basis of what we see going on social media, there's nothing wrong with it. Fighting for equality, speaking out against things that are brazenly said and could offend, all of that. But we have to look at like the intention behind it. What is the intention? And also, what is the result? If you posting a black square leads you to think that you're doing something, but in your real life, you're not calling out people who are doing certain things, or you're supporting companies that continue to like oppress certain people, or whatever it is, I think that kind of like the moral grandstanding, it feeds your ego, and like it makes you believe that you're a good person. It makes you believe that like I'm intelligent, I'm on the right side of history. But is it actually like doing anything positive? Is it injecting positivity and positive results, productive results into the world space? And that's what we, I think, need to really like think about, sit down, think about, examine. Because there's another thing that I want to talk about just in terms of like consciousness about like how we live our lives and stuff like that. In our lives, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in our lives that is not necessarily like because of us, or it's because of our desires or whatever. Like so much happens in the media and all of that conditions us to behave a certain way, and the only way to be able to stop those things and like do things with intention is to like sit down and look at them. So even like things like, oh, you might think that you really like this type of car, or you think that you really like this like pair of shoes or whatever, but a lot of it is just you've been programmed to believe that by, you know, the car company which hired psychologists to know which color to put in the advertisement and whatever to associate it with wealth and status or whatever, or like this piece of clothing was specifically put on this person who we've decided is cool. And so like even the things when we come to social media and the way that we use social media, I think people often think that like what they're doing is because it's what they want to do. I want to say that women who don't, what do you call it, divest from male relationships are the weakest link. But no, like see how you maybe are being like controlled by the social media platform that needs you to use it because it gets money from ad revenue. So it encourages you to get likes and put your opinions about things out there, and then people gratify you, and then you get addicted to the gratification. So then you're going to continue using it. Like just, I guess, yeah, all I'm saying is what we're doing, we're not like preaching and saying like you shouldn't say bad things to other people, whatever it is. It's just be more conscious about how you're using social media. Just really think about it, know the intention behind everything that you're doing, and make sure that it's not coming from an egoic place, a self-bolstering place, and also a non-compassionate place. If you're purporting to be someone who wants to promote compassion for people, like don't justify your hate with your ideology and say, oh no, I'm not hateful, but I can come at anyone any type of way because this is my ideology. Hate is hate. Inflammatory words are hate. Like it is what it is. So yeah.
And also just want to make clear, like I don't think, for me, it's not about tone policing, one. And two, for me, it's not about like, this is not directed specifically to any group. It's not like, this is directed to Black women only, even though I'm doing the Black women. This is directed to just, I think what you were saying is like appealing to like people who are like left leaning in their politics because they're basically more open-minded and whatever. But what was the thing you're talking about? I had the point that I wanted to say.
I was just talking about like lack of consciousness about how we do things. Like,
right. I also feel like we're all on like different paths. So I think that's also why the clashes come in, because for example, I'm on that path of like compassion and empathy and all that stuff. Not to say my path is better than anyone else's, but I just feel like for some people, that's not really a priority. You know, their path is more like, okay, compassion is great, empathy is great, but the human rights are vastly more important than any of these things.
Yeah.
Yes, which I totally understand, especially if it's your own personal rights that you're speaking of. And so sometimes when that happens, you throw certain things out the window because you're like, listen, for me, I want equality at whatever cost. Like, it doesn't matter the cost. Like, I was watching one of the videos, I think you sent me a video where the guy was talking about how with left-leaning, we want all these good things to happen, like equality. Our compassion shows through by saying at whatever cost. It doesn't matter what the cost is. I find left people don't care if a statue is damaged or a building is burnt down, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the right people care because they care about the traditions and the institutions and the systems and stuff like that. So I think a lot of us are approaching this very differently because the things that we care about are very different. Like at the core of what we care about is different. So some people are willing to sacrifice certain things that other people aren't willing to sacrifice. And so that's why I was saying maybe some of these movements aren't for me. It's not to say I'm not willing to sacrifice certain things for human rights, but I'm not going to throw my fellow woman under, like my fellow Black woman under the bus to prove a point about, like, I remember one time on Twitter, and I was like shocked by this conversation. Like, literally people, I was berated because I didn't get it. There's a lot about gender-based violence. And so I think it was Zimbabwean women who had started a conversation about how they don't like the fact that they are manipulated by, let's say, for example, gay men who are not out, basically. Gay men who are, let's say in Zimbabwe, a lot of men, they can't be out. It's just not safe.
It's not safe,
right? Yeah. So instead of being out, they just kind of, they conform to this heteronormative thing of like, you find your wife, you get married, you do things. And so there were a group of women who were having a conversation about how they feel like that is manipulation and that sometimes even these men perpetuate violence towards women, right? So there were two camps of people, the women, obviously, were having the conversation, and then obviously the other side who said those women were being homophobic. And the whole idea, the main person, I think it was that same person who was having that other conversation, was someone else. But they were saying that why do women care about gender-based violence when it comes from gay men when you already you allow heterosexual men to cheat on you, or you allow them to manipulate you, you allow them to beat you up. So in essence, you're being homophobic if you say you don't want this person to manipulate you and lie to you just because they're gay. So I was so confused by that conversation. I was like, wait, so what are you saying? So you're saying that it's okay if violence towards women, Black women specifically, comes from this group of people because they are oppressed? Like, I just didn't get that. Like, I was genuinely like floored. Like, that was for me the beginning of like, I don't think I want to be a part of this. Like, it's too much for me because violence, I'm not going to condone violence under any circumstance. I can understand certain ideas of why I don't think any person will intentionally manipulate someone and say, well, I'm going to pretend to marry a woman because I don't want to touch another I'm gay. Sometimes people don't even know that that's what it is that they're dealing with.
They're not aware,
So I'm not going to, for me, that I understand, like, it happens. Like, it's life. It's a consequence of this whole idea of patriarchy, and like, it is. That's just the reality. But what I don't understand is why then you try and justify why you wouldn't understand certain women who are not okay with that. Like, why are they not allowed to have that emotion of feeling manipulated or feeling betrayed or feeling humiliated or feeling cheated? Like, it's a genuine reality of what they feel and what happens from their perspective. Like, if we're looking at it from their perspective, like, it's a genuine, I understand it, you know?
It's real, yeah. And
so But the point is, then instead of trying to like say to these women, like, girl, like, I completely understand where you're coming from, but we also have to understand why men didn't do that,
Yeah.
why these men. That was not the conversation. The conversation was, you allow men to do this to you anyway, so what's the issue now? It's because they're gay, so you're homophobic. And I was just like, and it wasn't just Black women who were saying that, but I was just like, I was so confused. Even to this day, I think about it. I'm like trying to understand it, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Because I feel like we're okay with sacrificing or punishing certain groups of people. Like, it's like one of the articles that we're reading, how the people who feel like something is morally wrong, let's say murder is morally wrong, right? But we use murder to punish murderers.
Which is like
that whole thing of like, so are you on the moral high ground if you feel like you are justified if someone murders someone and then the appropriate punishment is murder? But I see it in the same way that it's okay to punish a certain group of women or whatever because of the history of what has happened to those women. I don't get it. Like that's kind of the thing of, you're on this moral high ground, but to punish, you feel justified to punish a certain group with the thing that you are against completely. But in this situation, you allow it.
You allow it, yeah. And it's like those women, that you're referring to, yeah, I mean, there is the potential that they were homophobic, but what if they weren't? And it's just the fact that they could hold this is the thing with the polarity and like the energy that we're in now with social media, especially. There's this idea that like two things can be true at the same time. Different thoughts can exist within a person. As humans, especially, we're so paradoxical. We're so like just expansive. There's just so much potential with us to see things from all different ways. It's possible for two things to be true at once. It's possible for you to focus on two different things at once, and we just don't believe that that's the case anymore. So it's just, even like you're saying about the movements, they kind of feel very rigid and like in terms of their scope. It's like, okay, so if you believe in, let's say if you believe in this is a bad example. I want to use a real life example, but I can't think of one. But just like if you believe in women's rights, let's just talk about feminism in terms of radical feminists. This doesn't represent the feminism movement, but then radical feminists might be like, if you are a feminist, then you have to check off all of these points. And then if you miss out, like let's say if you date men, then you are not a feminist. And it's like, why does it have to be like all or nothing? There's this huge idea of like, you're either with us or you're against us, and if you have one little thing that I disagree with, then you're no longer in the in group. And it's just like, guys, that's not how we're going to move forward, because that creates polarization, that creates separation. And like you were saying about like how when you went to uni and you were now like in this environment, and now because you're in an environment and you're exposed to certain type of people, then you could start to understand them and you started to evolve your views. This polarization and separation, it does not give room for people to understand each other, because you're always going to be in your own silo of like, this is my peeps and this is what we believe. So for example, with those women who had that question about like, okay, but then we're receiving gender-based violence from this group of people, and it's like, well, you're a homophobe, then now you're on the other side of the thing. These people are going to be like, I'm going to shelter myself with people who understand me, and maybe some of the people who understand me are actually homophobic women, so we're just going to start like talking about these things, and we're going to create these ideologies together. And it's just not healthy.
I guess it's waiting at the wings of people who are rejected from these movements because they dare to have an opinion or they dare to have a question, is the other side. They're waiting like,
extreme side.
Exactly. What happens, like for me, obviously, I don't see myself ever going that far, but I'm slowly removing myself from like the extreme, the fringes of it, like, because I just feel like, I don't know if we're being realistic. I don't know if we're being honest as well. Like, practically speaking, a lot of these people online, if you meet, like, there's this feminist that I met in person, and I don't think there was anything wrong with her. She was human, and I was just shocked because she was normal.
Yeah.
And so I don't know why I got this perception that she's superhuman and she lives on this like cloud of like high morality. But when I met her in person, she was normal, dating a normal guy, very, very normal. And so I was very surprised, like, okay, so there's like an imbalance in like the way we present our, like what you're saying, the way we present ourselves online and how we are in reality. A lot of the time, the conversations that you have with people on the internet, and this is true, when you let's say you meet that same group of people at a party, it's a very different conversation, and the tone is very different. Very hypocritical as well. Like a lot of the things that they'll never ever say online, they will say it like in the setting, but on Twitter, online, they will never say that because they know they can't say that. So yeah, I just found that really weird that we all have these dual personalities. Like when we go online, we want one thing, and then in person, we're different. Like I'm not gonna not smile at my uncle because he's patriarchy or whatever. Like I say hello, I smile, and I'm like very nice, you know. But maybe online, I'm like, yeah, F that nigga, like, you know, like I don't know. It's just like I'm trying to be as real as I am. I don't want to do the virtual signaling or the moral grandstanding. I'm trying not to put on an act online. I'd rather be honest and have people like cancel me or like call me out. I'd rather that than be fake and pretend and say everything that I know you want me to say. I think I just prefer that. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people now are being fake. Like a lot of men who call themselves feminists are not feminists at all.
Yeah, they don't act that way. They do it for the likes. They do it for the girls so that they can slip into bed with them, and then yeah, because they've seen how like it's just all posturing. Yeah.
Right. So I'd rather you be your misogynistic self. At least I know exactly the kind of person that I'm dealing with. And for you to pretend because there's this pressure on Twitter that if you say like women expire, everybody's gonna come at your neck or whatever. Just say what you just at least people know who you are and at least people know what they're dealing with. But unfortunately I guess people will try to get you fired or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I really like that resolve that like you're just gonna be you. And I guess for me, what I would implore other people to do is to just kind of also give people that allowance to be themselves, because I feel like even with the outrage and kind of the calls to cancel people and all of that, there is a little bit of entitlement in us where we believe that like we should have the right to tell somebody how to live their lives. Like we said, obviously with certain extreme examples, like, you know, when there's a very clear victim, you know, whether it's like transphobia that leads to someone dying or like, you know, someone is, you know, when we cancel like Bill Cosby and stuff, yeah, of course, like speak out about those things. But then even just in terms of policing speech, someone has misspoken, we don't even know if that is something that reflects their entire worldview, reflects anything that they're actually doing in physical reality to hurt somebody else. And like we've just decided, like we feel entitled to their speech. Their speech has to sit completely well with us, and if it doesn't, they're a terrible person. I think that that's not a realistic like view of life, and I would hope that we can kind of extend each other the ability to like be human and like you said, like misspeak or just be honest and be truthful, and then we engage them from that truthful place with it. It's a big ask, like what you're saying, it's not tone policing, because like some of this anger is justified and like some of the offense is justified, but then maybe can we find it in ourselves, especially if we want there to be tangible progress and tangible results of people, you know, changing their minds and stuff like that. Could we try just be like have more grace, and also just understand that like we can't control how other people are going to be, even though cancel culture has made us feel like we have all this power and like all of this. The truth is it's wrong to be entitled to somebody else's behavior. So yeah.
I agree. Like I think we need it sucks, I know, but we definitely need to be more realistic in the way we not only approach things but our expectations of people. Because right now, I think our expectations of humanity it's just, if we look at the pattern of how humans are, it's just not how humans have ever been. Like there's no generation, there's no time where humans were these perfect people. There was always an issue of the time. And I just don't think everything is going to be resolved in our specific us. I feel like we will meet our deaths and these things will still, some of these issues will still be there. But I think that for me now, it's like, okay, so how can we coexist? I know for some people that's not even a goal. Like they don't want that. They want to eliminate certain aspects of humanity. For me, I'm like, I'm okay. I'm not like looking for any group of people to be destroyed or to be um what do you call it? I'm just, for me the basics are respect my humanity, respect me as a woman, respect me as a black person, respect other people, give them their rights that they deserve. For me, that's the basics of what I would like to see, like just equality across the board and equity where there needs to be, like other people need to be boosted in certain areas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to see trans women getting murdered. I don't want to see black women getting murdered. I don't want to see LGBTQI people getting ostracized or mistreated. I don't want to see black people or black women being called ugly or lacking representation. Like, I just want the basics. And for me, everything else, like capitalism is not, I'm not saying I'm pro capitalism. I'm just saying I don't know if that's going to happen in our lifetime. And I'm here to stand with the movements where I can and with what I can do. But I'm not that person who has this like, tomorrow I want to wake up and all y'all, you need to be in a certain place mentally, emotionally. It's just not realistic. It's just not. It's going to take time. There's another group of kids that are coming up that in some parts are much, much better. In some parts, they're still being indoctrinated in the same ways. So I just feel like, and it took us hundreds of years to get to this place. I just feel like it's going to take a long time for us to get out of this situation. And so my question is, how can we coexist? Because we have to. Like, we share a planet with how many billions of people? How can we coexist? How can I coexist as a woman with men? How can I coexist with white people? How can
I need to switch on the light, but I'm listening because I've gotten dark.
Yeah, that's my question, is like, how can we coexist? Like, is that what we want? Is that okay for me to want just to be able to coexist and for people to live a happy, fulfilling life without any barriers or without facing harassment? And it almost feels too simplistic almost for me, because sometimes when I go on the interwebs and I have these conversations, I just feel like I don't know anything. I'm like, I feel like you guys are reading some books that I don't have access to. And I want to learn more, I want to read more, but I'm also not like gonna live my life every day fighting. I'm sorry, I just can't. I can't. I don't have the energy to fight every day, fighting someone, shouting at someone. I just sometimes just want to wake up one day and just relax, or go out with my friends and have a drink and things like that. Like, I just want to live a life that is healthy emotionally. And sometimes I feel like sometimes we're convinced that we have to fight each other all the time. And I'm like, okay, how can I coexist? Because I still have to wake up tomorrow and go and work. And maybe my boss happens to be this white guy. So what am I supposed to do? Do you get what I mean? Like, how can I exist in this space and still face these things with these people? How can I have dialogue and find like kind of like come to some sort of an agreement to like coexist? Like, can we just coexist? And I almost feel like I sound like a hot tip. I don't know. It's just weird.
I'm dead. No, I think I believe in everything you're saying, girl. I believe in it, and I think people also just need to. I think a lot of like the culture that of the fighting as well. We think that it says stuff about other people. So if someone does something and like we fight them, we think that like we are making a commentary on who they are. But I think that we should also just look at ourselves and be like, what does this tell us about us? When I'm every day like looking for someone, because sometimes it's a search. Sometimes people go into the search bar, type in the wrong word to find what this person has said, or like, sometimes they'll just expend so much energy. I think that let's look at how we want to exist in the world, because also transformation comes with individuals. So as much as we're focused on what other people are doing, let's look at ourselves and be intentional about like, why am I doing this? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I fighting this person? Is this from a genuine place of concern? Is this potentially me trying to boost my ego and posture myself as above? Am I trying to look intelligent? Whatever it is. So it's it's a tough one.
It's a lot. I think the conversation is just very packed. Like, there's just a lot of different things to explore. I think the fear for me is that knowing the people that I know, this can be framed as like look at these ignorant girlies, like these weak links, terrifying, talking about true things, which is fine. But yeah, I just feel like it's a conversation that I don't think you can ever exhaust it at all.
These weak links. I'm dead. Like, I'm even speaking to this as someone who, for the longest time, I've identified as a social justice warrior. Like, people have been like, you dumb SJWs. And I'm like, yes, reclaiming my name. That's what I am. So I'm not even coming from this. Like, I've always been someone who thinks in a nuanced or centrist way. Like, I've also been on the attack. But I'm starting to wonder if it's sustainable. Is it sustainable? And is it going to create the results that we want it to create? So, yeah.
I was also coming from a point of like being there and coming out of it, or still slowly, because just last week, even when that Miss South Africa person did that thing, I was just like, girl, you said what? Yeah. So yeah, I am also like learning. I'm slowly coming out of it. I'm not there yet for sure, but I feel like you should link all the stuff that you sent me because it's really, really good.
Yeah, there's resources down in the description box that have illuminated it's opened up my mind, my ideas of what morality comes from, our ideas of morality, and yeah, it's been good.
Because the other important thing is looking inward, and I feel like the scary thing about movements is sometimes they can be so focused on punishment and getting a message across that you neglect the person, these people at the center of these movements, who we don't know who you really, really are. Like, look at what's happening with Sean King, and he's one of the 4 people who's really like pushing this whole Black Lives Matter message and stuff like
and
that.
And has been one of the originals.
Right. And I know a lot of Black women have like called them out and stuff. This is not on Black women, but just in general, if you look at like the people who are speaking about what Black movements and some of the central characters, it's like, I'm not going to just trust you because you say all the right things on social media. I don't know who you really are, like, as a person. Like, I don't know what are the contents of your character and your heart. And so for me, that's also not become an important thing of like looking inward. It's not just about you saying all the right things. Are you also a genuine person? Because maybe a lot of these people, not everyone, including myself, sometimes we're not being genuine. We're just good at shouting at people, and sometimes we're so angry and so bitter and so upset. And I think sometimes when you're in that space, you need to take time and just kind of be, I don't know, you just need to breathe and just not be so emotionally into that, because I feel like it's not healthy. It's just not safe for us to engage at that level with everyone every day about every single thing. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Thanks, Sam. I will also link one more video down that touches on what you were saying, where this woman was just saying in her research about polarity that there's actually like, they did this test and they realized that people with lower serotonin were people who were the ones who tended to get like more gratification from punishing people on social media. So it almost like shows that like the people who are most obsessed with punishing are actually like sad people. So examine what's going on inside you and why you might be lashing out. It might have less to do with them than your own dissatisfaction.
Sometimes I wonder, like, the people that are engaging, they just don't have sometimes the ability to be objective and to come outside of that. They just have, it's my perspective, we are right. This is proven that we are right. And so everyone else who doesn't agree, you're like my enemy.
Yeah.
And you're not, you're someone who genuinely doesn't get where we're coming from. You're an enemy.
Yeah.
Literally, you're an enemy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I'm like, especially the very vocal, abusive people, I don't like that at all. Like, if someone is very vocal and abusive at the same time, it's like, what gives you the right to be verbally abusive to someone just because you're at the forefront of a movement?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for coming onto the show, girl, and bringing your insights.
Welcome.
Very valuable, and I hope people receive them well and not preachy and understand our intentions. But yeah.
I understand where we're coming from, and like, it's not like we know everything or we have the answers, but it's just a genuine conversation about how we feel about certain things. So hopefully it's received that way.
All right, bye. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Please do like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
I believe that if we are honest with ourselves, that the most fascinating problem in the world is, who am I? What do you mean? What do you feel when you say the word I myself? I don't think there can be any more fascinating preoccupation than that, because it's so mysterious, it's so elusive.